as we get started, what I'm curious about is just talking about what CPPs are and what CPPs are useful for. Because I remember when they were announced, which was almost 2 years ago, there's been a very big hype around the feature. It was dubbed the biggest change in ASO since iOS 17. Like, we had a lot to talk about. We're still talking a lot about them, but for people actually using CPPs, do you feel like the feature has lived up to expectations? Do you think it's a must for teams to use today?
Who do you want to start?
Maybe I can start if no one minds. Actually, it's a very great question. And yesterday I went to AppTweak to check top 100 apps and games because I was curious, like, really, are people using CPPs now? Because, of course, I'm working with a couple of clients, so I'm following a couple of competitors. But I wanted really to have more high-level overview to understand if other developers are using them. So what I found is actually among 100 apps in growth category, 50% of them are using CPPs. And if we check the split between apps and games, it's also like 50-50 around that. So I think it's a really interesting showcase of the fact that the CPPs are indeed a really great feature, and probably Anton and Simona and other ASO practitioners would agree with this statement, that it's indeed a really nice tool, but probably it's still not for everyone. And from my side, I would say that for apps or games which has really specific audience, like, I don't know, hyper casual games or probably apps from utilities, it doesn't really make sense to create CPP because you have pretty much just kind of one audience and you don't have that many features. But in case of, for example, Freeletics or any other similar app, of course, it's the way to test it. So yeah, that would be my input.
As a person from representing utilities app here, I would say that it's actually for us a use case to use custom product pages because of niches we have, audiences we have, and what we would like to communicate and what we would like to upsell for a particular need. Because an example, if we're suggesting our services, most likely for Tatiana and for Anton, I would suggest a different custom product pages, which will look absolutely different with a different messaging and with even different representation. So I would say that it's a use case. However, I actually checked utilities categories before this webinar, and from like 50 utilities apps around me, around our app, I counted 7 only using custom product pages, and I actually did not expect such a low number. So either marketers don't know how to use it, or they do not see the value in those custom product pages.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, did it live to the expectations? I mean, probably. I don't know. Like, with me, it's a little bit difficult to say because similar to Simona, we work like just in one company, so it's kind of hard to say, you know, for the whole market. It's probably easier for Tatiana, for example, who sees the market, or for you, Simon, from the kind of platform agency perspective. But in my opinion, I think the hype kind of died down with time. People just got a little more serious about like, okay, is it actually, you know, what are the use cases? Like, in which cases should we use it? I think people figured out that it's not a silver bullet. Like, they do work in some cases and do not work in other. It's heavily dependent on the traffic mix and how you use them, and do you actually know how to make them. So in my case, we are testing them. I would not say that the results are kind of through the roof, but we've got some interesting examples of CPPs, which you'll see later. And I would say that it's probably not the big new thing in ASO. Like, you just have to do this one thing now to sort of, not a new big hack that you can leverage and, you know, unlock a lot of performance, but it's definitely like a very important part of the toolkit now. So yes, I mean, I'm also looking forward to see what Apple does that, you know, moving forward, somehow, you know, improving the feature, improving the number of CPPs you can run and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, I mean, a big part of my toolkit right now.
I'd say from a platform and agency side, for me, the hype died down quite fast, and yet I feel like now it's not necessarily resurgent, but at least now it's getting serious. Just because I think a lot of people were seduced by the idea, and then it took more than 6 months to have any major ad network. I mean, you can debate whether Ironsource is a major ad network, basically, but they were the only one to really go all in on let's support this feature from Apple from the beginning. Even Apple search ads took a little while to be compatible, and then waiting for Meta to do it took a while. At least we got it. We're still waiting on TikTok. I think we're still waiting on Google. I mean, Google is also working on their own stuff for the Google search, for the Google ads part anyway. But that to me is kind of the part where I felt, yeah, at first everyone was like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And then it was like, well, actually, it was really hard to convince people to give them a try early, because everyone was saying, I kind of want to be able to measure everything in my MMP before I start. And so now it's becoming more feasible, and we're starting to see some interesting use cases. So we're going to get to those. Maybe one more question before we actually start just looking at some examples that you guys were kind enough to provide. Anton, you basically moved from just doing ASO to doing gross marketing. Simona, you're still focused on ASO. Tatiana, you said you kind of touch on both ASO and UA, plus you're on the agency side. So according to you, who needs to be the owner of CPPs in a company?
I would say, yeah, I can start. I think the people who are doing ASO and Apple Search Ads, basically working with the app stores, should be the owners, since, I mean, all the knowledge of how to construct a product page, how the screenshot should look like, how to analyze that stuff, how to submit that stuff, that knowledge kind of lies within the ASO team. So I don't see what, I mean, if you do have an ASO team or an ASO person, I don't see why somebody else should be owning that. Simona, do you have anything to add?
I would agree with you as the person who has multiple ESO people working on the custom product pages, plus a separate user acquisition team. I believe that it also should be with ASO team, because I believe we know the best the policies and what Apple might think and what they might reject on. So I will leave it with the ASO team.
I think you're muted, Tatiana, somehow. We still can't hear you, so I'll try and pretend I'm lip reading and give my own opinion as well. No, I think anyway we are seeing ASO people. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, finally, great. So I was saying that basically here I would agree with Anton and Simona. At AppAgent, we have pretty much ASO and UA people merged together in one team. So we work very closely with each other. To that, I would probably also add that product team sometimes can also bring very interesting insights based on the information that they have about the audience. So sometimes we also use their knowledge as an inspiration for what we can test on CPPs and overall on the screenshot, what we want to communicate to the users. But yeah, pretty much ASO plus UA team.
Can I change my answer?
Yeah, go.
Is it too late? I was just thinking about that. Like, the question is who should be the owner. Honestly, like, it does not necessarily matter who's the owner. Like, I can see why, for example, if it's a performance marketing team, if it's if the CPP is created for the sake of connecting to a massive Facebook campaign, I can see why the UA team might be interested in owning that, because that's essentially their spend, their budget, like it's their, I guess, responsibility to make that work. However, it doesn't mean who's the owner, as long as people actually, as long as the ASO team plays this role of kind of the reviewer, the advisor, as long as that side of the, I guess, expertise is heard and used, then it's fine. Like the owner is kind of an ego thing, right? It doesn't really matter who the owner is. Like, what you need to make sure is that the CPP is done well. And it's quite hard to do it well without ASO people, because like we've seen, if you work in agencies, you've probably seen sometimes where like the company doesn't really have an ASO person, they do have a UA team. A UA team takes over ASO, and it doesn't really work that well always. Like there are some details which you need to be aware of. So as long as like the ASO person can actually contribute and play an important role in creating the CPP, it's fine. And then it doesn't really matter who the owner is. That's my new answer.
All right. I agree 70% with all of you and 30% with no one. The 30% are basically, I think the true owner needs to be whoever is really leading the marketing / growth part of the organization. It's not always the CMO directly. I mean, CMOs kind of orchestrate everything, but so they may not have time to focus more on certain topics. But to me, what's really important is that there's structure to the madness that can come with CPPs. What I see is whenever we discuss CPPs with any client, almost immediately someone has an idea of what to create. But then there's not a lot of structure in the, okay, but how many of these can we create? Which one do we need to create first? And that's kind of where I always try and push people to say, like, don't stop at one. Like, if you have an idea for a test, probably it's always good to like don't get stuck too long on thinking about it, but also be ready to really escalate these. Because to me, what was really cool and why I was personally hyped with CPPs was really the fact that suddenly it meant that ASO was not just about, oh, these are the people doing keywords and like let them play on their own, but actually you need to bring them in, because for me, ASO is this great combination of you have some insight as to what people are searching for, so you know what they want. You can check reviews as well for that. You can see what creatively gets done by other people, and then you need to talk to whoever in the company, can be product, can be marketing, but whoever figures out these are the key message, the key stories to tell, because this is what people will like about what we have to offer. And so for me, the key thing is to make sure that if there has to be one owner, it's someone who talks regularly to the ASO team for the reasons that you've all explained, but it's someone that's going to push beyond just the idea of, oh, it's ASO leading this, so everyone else takes a back seat, and it's more someone driving the marketing vision that has to be also pushing for this and advocating this.
I agree. I mean, it's really important to see the whole funnel, right? Like CPP is just a part of that. So that's a really good point.
Thank you for your appreciation. I think now is actually the time to go into some examples. So for people listening to us, basically a week ago, I asked all of you, show me your CPPs. So I think the goal is that we go through different examples, and for each of you, what I'd love to hear is a bit like the process of how did you guys come up with this ID? Was there a particular ad network you were targeting with this CPP? And also what would be the KPI where you're going to say that you're going to measure to say it's worth doing this CPP, or maybe it's not? So Anton, you're actually first on this one. What can you tell us about these two examples?
Yeah, so these are two custom product pages. They're not super different. The difference is basically in the copy on the first screenshot. Arguably, we could go a little deeper with customization, but yeah, it's copy. It's also a bit of a kind of UI difference in the first screenshot. What we were trying to achieve there is Freeletics as a fitness app has a bunch of use cases and a bunch of different ways you can train. It's suitable for people who are looking to, gain muscle mass or want to do bodyweight exercises or want to work out at home versus, in the gym. So there's a lot of those little use cases, which in our case are also reflected in the Apple Search Ads kind of campaign structure and ad group structure. So what I was kind of aiming for is to select out based on the kind of the search volume and the keywords that are not only reflective of what we have in the app, but also perform quite well and actually give us like a fair amount of installs and purchases. So try and create those custom product pages basically aligned with the user intent and aim to, increase the conversion rate a little bit more. So that was pretty much the goal. yeah, as I said, this particular one is for Apple search ads. So in terms of KPIs, I'm never looking at one KPI, but we're looking at ROAS a lot, just like as a UA team. So ROAS would be one, but then I would also look obviously at the KPIs which are directly related to changing screenshots, so like conversion rate, TTR, CPA as well. So it's a bunch of metrics that I'd be looking at to try and determine whether or not those work too well. And I mean, in terms of performance, I think we did not see like just kind of across the board an incredible, uplift and great results, but it did work for some. It did work for some ad groups. It kind of did not really change much for others because once again, it's not a big change in terms of creatives. This is a big, I think, thing for ASO in general, not just for CPPs, but like if you want to see a big difference, you need to make a big change. It's very rarely that you just make like a few copy edits and kind of conversion rate skyrockets. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. We've had more of those. I just shared two, but yeah, as I said, like Freeletics is a kind of pretty diverse app with many use cases. So that's pretty much how we approach that, kind of merging what we have in the app with what we're actually doing in terms of structure and bidding on keywords in Apple search ads.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. If you don't mind staying on, and maybe I'll ask Simona and Tatiana to kind of join me in this exercise, but if you guys are up to kind of also exchanging opinions and criticism of those, personally, what I really like is, in a way, how maybe scrappy this is, simply because it's really for me a great demonstration of how it's not that hard to start playing around CPPs and at least testing. Like, you have a very clear use case, which is you just want to kind of make simple tweaks to try and see if search ads can perform a little bit better. And like, you did change a bit of copy, which means there's already at least one person with access to Figma doing something. But sometimes to me, like, even just rotating screenshots is something I think a lot of companies are ignoring, as a CPP can just be change a couple first screenshots, because there's also, especially if you're thinking search ads, it's a lot about the first impression. So it's kind of what I really find interesting here. The rest is more about screenshot design in general. So I think Tatiana may have more to say about this because it's really your expertise. But yeah, I find this is a really cool example to get us started, because it shows that it doesn't take days of work with a design team to get started with CPPs.
Yeah, actually, it was also my first thought. So I agree with your comment, Simon. And it's one of the possible approach how you can really start with CPPs. If you're even not sure if this would work for you or not, it doesn't really make sense to invest a lot of time into the production of the whole set of the screenshots and redesign completely everything. So I also like this approach, and we use it quite often. Probably later on my example, you will see a little bit different example where we approach it in a different way. So I think it will be interesting to compare these two approaches to CPP production.
For sure. Any final word on these ones, Simona or Anton?
No, I just wanted to say I did not expect that to turn into the roast of my CPPs. So I was like, okay, waiting for something bad to be said, but so far it seems like we're having compliments. I'm happy.
I mean,
do you have anything to add?
If we were to roast, you would definitely not be on the top of my list, because my biggest complaint whenever roasting a CPP tends to be with people who don't have, like, who design great screenshots that completely ignore how they appear in the store. So yeah. I think we talked about that a few months ago, you and I, with like an example of people who had their USP at the bottom of the screenshot and basically wouldn't appear in the first impression. So that's the kind of thing that ticked me off, but no major element to roast otherwise. So next up we have you, Simona.
So this is where the roast part will come, right? So I have two cases here, actually. If you would check custom product page part on AppTweak, you would see that we have many of custom product pages, and we even split those by localizations. So we were working for those actively for those 2 years since the launch, I would say. And these two examples are actually very different and have a different background story. So the very first one is demand-driven custom product page, where we notice that our product type is needed for our services are needed for accessing content where it is not really accessible. And we kind of saw the volume of keyword increasing, and we jumped in. We prepared the custom product page, which correlated with the banned services, in particular state where we targeted it. And yeah, it was running for, I believe, a couple of days. And when we noticed that demand is off, we turned it off as well, since we also measured our success of custom product pages on the revenue driven, right, the return on ad spend. And we also checked what, I believe it's marketers thing. We also checked what our competitors are doing because the service was needed. And we noticed that none of them were on the train when the demand was driving. So we were the first ones, and others jumped only afterwards. But it was still nice to manage to launch it and to see if the particular keywords which was targeted during the custom product page. And the second one below, which you are seeing, is that's an example of education. Let's call it like that. So the thing is that our competitors exist in the industry where they are free, and we are kind of premium one, and we never hit it, and we're proud of that, because if you're not paying for the product, most likely you are the product, and there with that comes some negative impact on your device. So we try to show in the very first screenshots the communication and the differences why we are better than others. So it's a little bit a competitor strategy, but as well education. We kind of took an Anton's approach here, where the rest of the screenshots are similar to do default listing, but the very first two, which are the most likely visible, are communicating the message. So the thing here is we launched it. It was live for, I believe, a week or so, and then Apple decided to reject it. So the thing is that whenever you're submitting custom product pages to those who are not have submitted it yet, every single custom product page with its own localizations go through the Apple's review separately. And once it approved by Apple, you could start use it with Apple Search Ads or any other platform you would like to use it. So ours was live, and Apple afterwards rejected it because the very funny reason is they saw the pricing message here. So Apple has the policy. And I encourage everyone to find that pricing correlated message, because apparently the keyword free, which is not even in the promotional text, but in the very first screenshot, the only part of the free keyword was the thing which triggered Apple, and it got rejected. So yeah, that's our story behind those two non-usual cases.
And did you use those with Apple Search Ads as well?
Yeah, actually, those. Both of those were used by with Apple Search Ads, and the very bottom one was the best performing custom product page. And I'm not lying, we have 20 plus custom product pages, different custom product pages, and this one was performing the best. And then Apple decided to throw it.
Why do you think it was the best performing? Is it because it has this like free VPN keyword, which is I guess like people sort of search for that and they see that and they kind of react really well, or? I guess what is the explanation for that?
Well, obviously, this is kudos to our user acquisition team of well-targeted keywords, and we have a niche messaging here, which we targeted. Then, yeah, the communication, people see the keyword free, they do not read sometimes, or they read it and they correlate the screenshot and the messaging with their situation. And yeah.
I think it's one of the things where like it actually kind of works well with ASO and keyword optimization as well. It's not proven, but the way I understand how the algorithm works and why we try to include the kind of the important keywords in the screenshots as well, as like if free VPN is a big keyword for you, and then you also have this cool custom product page and it increases conversion rate. In my understanding, that kind of sends the signal to the algorithm that the keyword is actually more relevant to your app. So it might even have some positive effects on organic rankings. But that's speculation, but I kind of believe that's how it should work.
For semantic keywords purposes, yeah, it absolutely makes sense. We never actually positioning ourselves as the free VPN. We are like premium one, but the comparison and the education, I believe, made a point here as well for the audience, because not everyone knows what the VPN is. They just know that they need VPN for some particular case, and they used it like that. But semantic keywords, I agree with you, it's a thing.
So we have a question from the chat, just comparing the two. And so I guess specifically for the first one, the question is, what inspired the black background instead of blue?
So obviously we do have a brand book, and it was recently refreshed, and we even have a different shade of blue now. But the very first one, it actually correlates with the brand, which services were banned particularly. So we tried to stand, and we actually were targeting the similar keywords. So if you were looking for a particular brand which had services not available for a particular country we were targeting in, you would see that their brand colors matched with those who are present here.
I think without naming the brand, we can just simply explain it's related to the adult content industry and leave it at that.
Okay, so for those who can recognize it by the color scheme, would correlate with the brand then. So, but short answer, yeah, we could try to make it similar to the brand which we are targeting for.
Personally, what I really like with the story is also how, like, you have still a search ads angle, but I think even more than that, it highlights how there's also a logic to build CPPs on seasonality, because I think that a lot of cool apps don't always realize how seasonality plays into things. And so in some cases, I would say even go all out and just update the default screenshots. But in some cases, it's like certain keywords are seasonal, or certain creatives that are working on social media are seasonal. And so making sure that there's also this notion of the store can also be seasonal, whether through default creatives or through CPPs, has a big impact. Tatiana, I think you're going to tell us more about seasonality, but I don't know if you wanted to add anything before I move to the next screenshots.
No, maybe just one comment. At the first glance, I thought that the copies looks a bit small on the blue version, but maybe it's just my personal perception.
It's bigger on the actual iPhone, though.
Yeah, I think here it's more like the two screenshots are not the same dimensions. They were grabbed from different devices, so that I think is why there's a difference.
Yep,
you're right. Yeah.
But very important to remind people, make sure that whatever you write on your screenshots can be read, because designers with 4K screens will hide a lot of amazing details that no one can ever see, and that's not how we get better conversion. Anyway,
actually, why I mentioned the copies, just from my experience, what I see that there's probably not such a thing as big enough copy. So you make them bigger each time, and it seems the performance is still getting better. So that's what I found from running also PPO tests, and it applies also to CPPs. So that's why I just professional deformation a bit. So basically the example that I want to show you, it's a little bit different. As you can see here, I have not 2 or 3, I have, 5 examples of CPPs. It was difficult for me to decide which one I really want to show. So I decided, okay, I will show you everything, because it's actually a nice showcase how you can use CPPs, because here, even from the first glance, you see that there are so many directions, and probably without even going into much details and checking each and every screenshot, the first thing that I assume catches your eye is how different those CPPs are from all of the perspectives, from the design to communication, images. So pretty much all of the screenshots are different because they were used for different purposes. And yeah, basically, I didn't mention it's those CPPs are for one of the popular game in trivia category, which is called Trivia Crack. It's one of our clients. We were helping them with auditing the ASA and UA and many other things. Those screenshots they produced themselves, but we were helping them with different areas, including ASA. What I really want to maybe highlight here, as I already mentioned, different directions how you can use CPPs. So for example, let's say on the left bottom one, they have on the first screenshot like all the pair of people, probably in this case targeting different audiences.
I don't know if you guys lost audio as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tatiana, we're losing your audio.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Something going on with my microphone. So yeah, I was saying that one of the examples is targeting indeed different audiences, different age. Also here, it's a really nice example how they changed this famous quote, one apple per day keeps doctor away. They changed it to one trivia a day keeps doctor away. So really nice. And overall, the focus here is on how to keep your brain sharp. Then the next example, it's probably from the Valentine's Day, the recent holiday that we had. So in this case, Trivia Crack also leveraging quite nice seasonal events. The last two, it's actually two different ways how you can target audiences that left you. So for retargeting, basically, the first option that you may choose is to really show the new features that you have in your game or app. Here they are introducing a new challenge, so they are communicating the updates that they have in the game. And the last one is really emotional one, just simple, very straightforward message, we miss you. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's examples from my side. Not sure if you have any questions.
I actually have a lot of questions on the last two, or at least like,
Okay.
I'm really curious about this case of retargeting, because I think it's one that is not often seen. And so I'm curious kind of which ad network do you pair it with? And also, how do you, like, what's going to be the KPI and how are you going to measure the impact? Because I think, like, even with MMPs, you have to be careful with the fact that if it's retargeting, is there a reattribution window in which you actually fit or these kind of things? So kind of curious about what you can tell about that.
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned, we didn't really produce this screenshot. So I know that those examples were used in different networks. So in this case, I'm not sure that it was exactly Apple search ads, maybe something different. So unfortunately, couldn't give you here the full answer.
Okay. But maybe then asking Simona, have you guys ever tried CPPs for retargeting campaigns?
Targeting, I believe so. We even tried it for influencers, since we are lucky enough to have people dedicated working with influencers and affiliates. But for us, the sources we have tried so far, different ones. Apple search ads are the ones performing the best because Apple custom product pages are the best connected to the Apple search ads, I believe.
Anton, don't know if you have any experience with those.
No, honestly, I never used that for retargeting. I had some ideas for what to do, similar to like "We Miss You." I had ideas of doing like "Welcome Back to," let's say, Freeletics. But no, I never actually designed or ran those. So yeah, I can't really add too much. But I think that's a good idea. Why not?
I think for me, what this reminds me of is somewhat legendary churn playlist from Spotify, where I think even just by playing on what you show in your product, you can try and get cute about like things in your product that basically send a message of, oh, this is like Spotify would probably just be able to show a playlist about please come back and things like that, which could even be paired interestingly to things about Valentine's and just see if people catch on. But I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that there are a lot of places to experiment within search ads, because to me, a lot of the focus is usually match a CPP with a particular keyword or campaign. But one thing I would be thinking of testing as well would be the other ad placements, non-search results ad placements, especially to Datab, where I'm not always a big fan because of the amount of people means usually it's less qualified. But I think that's when actually it makes sense to use the other targeting tools from Apple Search Ads, such as target only users who've never downloaded the app or only users who have, and try and see if there's ways to replicate creative that may have worked on other ad networks where you've been successful with retargeting and expand on that.
Yeah. I'm also looking at those CPPs. I'm not sure like if they were running all at the same time. I'm just wondering, I guess I understand why somebody would want to just redesign everything for every single CPP. But then the question becomes like, once you actually see the difference in performance, how do you actually attribute that difference to, like, what do you attribute that to? Like, they're all literally different, you know? Like, I don't know what is the kind of the baseline, the default version of the page. But like, if I was looking at that and somebody said, okay, we have those 6 CPPs running now, and we have also a default set of screenshots. To me, that doesn't look like a best practice, because it's similar to the A/B test on the App Store or Google Play, where you can test a redesign and you can find a good result. Like if it works, I mean, nobody will tell you that you're doing it wrong, right? But if you really want to understand whether or not specific element works or doesn't work, you want to be able to isolate it. And in the case where everything is different, it's just really hard to do that. So this is more, this actually looks like a custom product page designed by somebody who does not necessarily understand how custom product pages work, even though they look great and they might be working even. That's just my opinion. But yeah, if like, I usually want to be able to tell like, okay, this works and this doesn't. And in this case, it's kind of just, you know, a guess basically.
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, those were designed for absolutely different user case scenarios, and the different targeting most likely would be applied here.
Yeah. That's, first of all, Anton, thank you very much. That's a very reasonable point. First of all, those were designed indeed, as Simona said, for different audiences and for different networks. So not all of them will run on the Apple Search Ads. A couple of them, if I'm not mistaken, are actually designed for Facebook. And speaking about A/B testing, it's another, I think, very interesting topic. I know that some people actually use CPPs for so-called A/B test, which indeed sometimes could be an interesting idea, because with CPP you can target actually a specific country, and with PPO you can target only locales. So in this case it works very nicely. But at the same time, I'm not sure that if it's a great idea to compare CPP to default page, because they are going to different audiences. For example, CPP for sure would go to the platform 15 plus on iOS. So basically that's when it was developed. So CPP would go to those platforms, and for default we actually don't know for sure where those custom product pages would go to, which people, to which audiences. So it's not really fair to compare them. And the last point to this, it's really good thing to what Anton said, that if you change just one element, then you know that if it works better, it's because of this element. If it doesn't work, it's also because of this element. But at the same time, the second approach that you may want to test is, okay, you redesign everything, but this everything goes pretty much in line with the hypothesis that you have. So if you target, let's say, different audience, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change just one copy or one image. You can really redesign everything, but it should really be related to this audience that you target. So in this case, you can really validate if your hype works or not.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And it touches also on a question we have from Melissa in the chat, asking how to tell whether a CPP has done better than the control. I think when you're using search ads, it's easier, because unless you're launching the CPP at the same time as you're launching the campaign, you can already see in the past how the control has been performing, so you can see if there's better performance. I think if you're using other ad networks, other traffic sources, usually what I tell people is try to actually create the CPP with the default creatives and just have that running for a couple weeks, just so you can get a baseline. Because yeah, you can, like, the default CVR you get is a mix of all traffic sources. And so if 70% of your traffic is just branded search, and now you do a CPP only on competitor keywords, then you're probably not going to get better than the average of everything, because your average is too much weighted by the impact of brand search. And so you could be led into thinking the CPP is not working when it's not, or also in other cases, think the CPP works when it doesn't. So I usually say, by definition, you don't compare it to the default itself, you compare it to where it was before, which means you kind of need to be able to measure what it was before. We're running a bit late, so I'm going to try and get my way out of pitching mine. But if you guys want to roast me, go ahead. Basically, the story behind this one is just that when working with SoundCloud, who's one of our clients, we found in the user reviews, a lot of people were positive about how you can skip as many tracks as you want for free. And doing a little bit of research, we realized it's because if you use a competitor, you don't have that same benefit. And so we just tried coming up with something to simply highlight that value proposition and run it on competitors' campaigns. But when I look at it, I'm still thinking there's so much more I want to change to this one, that if you guys have items, I hope it's just what I have in mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I think there was a question in the chat about like the number of screenshots. So I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming these are not all the screenshots, right? You had more.
In search ads, it's kind of best to do it for 6, just in case you also appear in the organic results. But for me, otherwise, the number I usually go for in terms of total creators is 8 most of the time, just to have a full gallery. But maybe, as we saw with other examples, you guys had not changed all of the screenshots from the default, just to kind of change the ones that people will see for sure, and then reuse some of the stuff you have.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you want to have, just answering the question, you want to have 6 at a minimum, but it doesn't mean that you need to change all 6. You can change like 1, 2, or 3, but you want to have at least 6 screenshots.
Before we run out of time, Anton and Simona, I kind of need you to talk about this, because I don't know. I mean, Simona, I know there were other people who started playing on their competitors' keywords before you did, but yours is one that caught my eye. And then Anton, basically, I'm not sure how obviously you strolled that, or did you come up with the same idea? But is this something you would say other people should steal as well?
And not steal, just use a good examples for the creativity. So for us, we're working in the industry where the competition is really tough. I mean, I'm not hiding it. And we noticed that with the CPPs appearing for our competitors, they became a little bit more creative with the ways what they are saying. We saw a couple of examples where we are saying that we are the fast. We have a user selling point where we're saying we are the fastest. Then the other one who is bidding on our brand is saying we are the fastest for sure. So those kind of things are happening. But then one of the PR example appeared from the competitor with quite a statement, I would say, in the first screenshot. So we thought, well, that's the time for us to step up and be braver. And luckily for us, we had a competitor who has the similar brand name as ours. And we just thought that, well, misspells are still happening on the App Store, and autocorrects are not the best when you have a unique brand name. So why not use it? And we did. Plus, we saw that the competitors are not really bidding, not doing their brand defense on their brand keywords. So why not? And we tried. And with this, we unlocked the creativity for ourselves and for others. I know we were like kind of bolder because the other brand was not so that obvious, but we tried. And that's actually what Anton was telling. We actually reused default screenshots just to keep the space. And only the first screenshot was like the common one, the visible one, generating conversion rate. So yeah.
So has this worked, Anton? Like, if you've been experimenting with it more recently, has this worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if the question is, did I steal the idea? I did. It's very, I think it's a great way to, to target your competitors. It's also pretty creative, I think, and bold. And we're also like, we saw what NordVPN was doing. And we also saw some examples from, I think, from Firefox or somebody.
I think it's Opera that was targeting
Opera.
Firefox.
They were also targeting their competitors in this kind of cheeky but direct way, kind of fearless as well. And yeah, I mean, for us, it was not a problem to try something like that. It kind of aligns with the print guidelines. Nobody was against it. So yeah, we tried. In terms of performance, it's hard to tell because it was applied, I mean, as you can see on the screenshot from AppTweak at the end of January. And if you know anything about fitness, or if you've ever done like a New Year resolution, like everybody starts working out in January. So it's not an equal, if you do a before and after analysis, that's not an equal comparison. But based on some kind of, let's call that early signals and just trends, yes, I would say that we are seeing some good results in terms of TTR. But it's hard to tell, again, because we were not comparing equal time periods. So, but yes, right now this is running. Conversion rate definitely did not drop, which is already a win in itself. But yeah, I think it's fun. And I would like to see kind of more apps sort of, experimenting and pushing the boundary a little bit with like how you can play with the competitor, maybe like with your own brand search or with, search for other keywords. But yeah, thanks Simona for the idea. Everybody in the team liked it. So yeah, that's why we went with it.
I believe it was like a good example how to step up and how to show the competitors that you're not afraid to bid. So for you, I don't know if you saw some response from other brand you were bidding on. I believe it was the keywords here are not visible, but have you seen like...
I'll start talking about my keywords, okay?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you saw that like the bids increasing or I don't know, any bad outcome of that.
I did not see anything negative so far, to be honest. So TBD, but no, so far no. So far we're seeing quite good increase in TTR. So if there's somebody from the fitness industry on this webinar, please do not try that. I don't think it will work for you, but for others, yeah, it's why not? Take the idea.
All right. I think we're officially out of time, but if you guys don't mind playing a couple minutes of overtime, just want to make sure that if people have questions and haven't yet asked them, either in the question box or in the chat, definitely now is a good time. There's one I think we didn't get to touch upon, which was from Yeffen on, is there any other traffic sources aside from search that you've used? What were the results if you did? For me, especially, I would say, has anyone tried web to app funnels using CPPs?
We did not, no. Even though we run quite a lot of web to app campaigns, that's actually something that limits us in terms of usage of CPPs. So no, we did not.
Same here.
Yeah, we also did not. Maybe I can share another example, which is not, I think, very typical one, how we sometimes use CPPs. It actually might work for developers who doesn't have MMP yet. So basically, we use CPPs to track the bottom funnel, and especially it's like a good case if you're not sure if ASA for you, but you still want to test this channel and you want to understand not only CPIs and conversion rate, but also to understand some bottom funnel metrics. CPPs in this case very handy, and it's not necessarily you really need to produce new screenshots. You can use pretty much the same that you have currently as a default one. But yeah, then you can simply go to the analytics in App Store Connect and you will be able to see pretty much all the regular metrics that you see for other source of traffic.
I can say for myself, web to apps is kind of one of these items that I've flagged as would be nice to try, but didn't get an opportunity yet. So I'm gonna keep going with the questions because we have a couple more. One is if I think especially for you, Tatiana, if you spot any major differences in how CPPs for games are being done.
What probably caught my eye really is how it works for casino. I see that usually they run like crazy amount of CPPs compared to other games. But yeah, pretty much as I was mentioning at the very beginning, what I can see that CPPs are used not only for apps but for games as well, and it's pretty much equal. It really depends on the hypothesis that you have, and if you really have different audiences, you want to communicate it in a different way. If we speak about gaming examples, probably one of the best that I like is from Merge Mansion. They really have very nice CPPs, and they're targeting audience really in a different way, from different angles, from something mysterious to simply showing the match 3 mechanic. So I think it's really a great example for gaming case.
Anton, Simona, I don't know if you saw examples. I can say on my end, I think the biggest difference is seeing usually games seem to go a lot more to the motivators and to the persona, less to just how to use things. I think it's because apps tend to be more product feature focused in their screenshots anyway. I think games are already going more into the like, why will you like this game, and what are the different aspects of the game that people can resonate with. But it's something I think apps should really get inspired by, because there's also a lot of different reasons. Even when you use the same product feature, there's still different reasons to use an app. If you guys bear with me, there's one more question I want to touch on. Jamie is asking, what's the best thing you'd recommend for someone just starting with CPPs?
Easily. Yeah, just don't overthink it. At least just to try, because I'm still seeing people that they do not have any custom product pages, and they're using the Apple Search Ads for the default listing. So just be clear what you're trying to sell, and start with value propositions. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I would say if you're just starting with running those, definitely don't try and kind of go big and redesign the whole thing and make a custom video for a CPP. You don't know what will work. I can also suggest a thing to read if you want. When I was working in Feature, we wrote this big thing called the Custom Product Page Playbook. You can just Google it. It's a pretty big like PDF with everything you needed to know about CPPs like a year and a half ago. Some things changed, but like genuinely speaking, not too many. So if you're just starting, that's a good thing to read, actually.
I think I have also written a guide on AppTweak's blog or on our website, but I will say actually don't start there if you're just getting started, because I think reading 30 pages of theoretical content, like ideally do it right after you got started so that you get more ideas. But I think it's more important to start by just starting. And then if you can, I would say keep your Braun team out of it, just because I tend to have this opinion that Braun teams don't accept going bold. And I think with CPPs, what's important is also to have fun with them, to really try and push new messaging. And so that kind of like, if the Braun team is always going to be like, okay, but let's play it safe, I would say like don't go crazy with the amount of resources needed, but you can actually do some very different things to experiment with without having to use a lot of resources. And that's kind of where I would say is also a good idea of where to start.
Yeah, it's also like if you're just starting, if you're, let's say, an ASO manager and you know about CPPs and you really want to try them out, but like the rest of the team who will be affected, like the UA team or the designers or the kind of wider marketing team, they don't even know what CPP is. It might be a good idea to sort of try to educate them a little bit more about the benefits, why you actually want to do that, like what can be expected in the best case scenario, just to kind of sell that to the team first. Then you get more buy-in, then more people can be excited about you trying that. And yeah, I guess it would be easier to work with those.
All right. I think we're good with questions. So if not, I hope we'll be able to catch up with people after this. Thank you all three. It was really amazing to have you share your insights and share your examples.